So I became the squad leader. From there, I used to go on patrol with a man named Nick Frangillo. God bless him. He always watched my back. I watched his. It was really a team, a real good team effort, and we were confident in each other. It was what you always wanted, namely in combat, to have someone you could stay with you that you knew was protecting you as you was protecting them. Well, Nick and I used to go on patrol. Sure enough, one day, the captain said to me, "You're going on patrol tonight, and I want you to lead the patrol." So he said to me, he sends a company runner down. The company runner comes down, and I did a foolish thing. It was about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and while crossing to go to the company headquarters, as I say, the Germans evidently spotted us, and they figured at any time when they saw 1 or 2 people that there had to be other people around. So they fired mortar shells at us. And I didn't hear them coming. And it dropped right next to me, and I got hit. Craziest thing about it is, I got sprayed completely on my left side, my leg and my hand. 2 very peculiar things. Number one is, it didn't hurt. It felt warm, evidently it was shock. The other thing is the fact that in those days, the rear echelon had combat boots, but we still had leggings. And the leggings saved my neck in the fact that I have 5 or 6 pieces on my ankle, and a couple of pieces on my leg. But a lot of the pieces stuck into the leggings, and when I took off the leggings, the pieces fell out. Some of them broke the skin, so I had wounds there, but it didn't penetrate enough. In the ankle, it penetrated. Anyway, prior to that, the night before that happened, an interesting incident. We had gotten hit by a German sending patrols up, and they crawled along. We were at in Rosdorf. We were at the sports plots, they called it. It was a swimming pool and a soccer field. And along the edge of the swimming pool were the bathhouses. And the Germans were able to hide themselves coming up along the bathhouse. And they hit us pretty good. In fact, a couple of the guys who you will interview, one of them, Phil Walensky, got hit. Phil Willens, he got hit the day before. So we convinced the captain that we should burn down the bathhouses. So he decided to give us a thermal grenade. Well, I had never seen a thermal grenade before. It was a little gray canister type with a handle on it like a regular grenade. And he said, "You'll burn down the bathhouse with a thermal grenade." So Nick and I went out that night to burn the bathhouses down. Well, it was a bright moonlit night, and I took the grenade to look at it, and for some reason I must have released the handle because it popped. When it popped, I said, "Nick, we got to get rid of it," and he was on the wrong side of me. So I, in effect, gave him a hell of a shove to get him out of the way, and I threw the grenade. But it didn't quite make it to the bathhouses because we were a little away. This 8-foot hole appeared in the concrete. It was a hell of a deal. Anyway, we went back, and the next day, of course, I got hit. That night, by the way, Nick went out with gasoline, burned down the bathhouses. He was a great soldier. Apropos of that, why did we always want to come back to the outfit you were with before? Because of the fact that I think the underlying experience was the fact that you had confidence in the people you were with. You knew what the hell to expect. You knew you had a basic team, and it worked. Well, the night I got hit. Nick was what they wanted Nick to go on the patrol. I was supposed to go on with him. And there was a new replacement that came in. Gung-ho to take on the Germans, he was going to win the war. And he convinced the captain that he'd like to go on patrol with Nick. He went on patrol with Nick. Well, when we crossed the river, on the other side of the river, the Germans had abandoned a trench. And in that trench, it was a manicured trench. They had evidently prepared to stay a while because there were fir needles and under a lattice work of birch tree branches. It was beautiful. It was really a well-manicured trench. And Nick got in that trench, and sure enough, at the same time, he met a German patrol. Well, the German patrol started to throw potato mashers at him. Not potato mashers, they called them pepper pots. It was a concussion grenade, a little black thing. Germans had very sophisticated weapons. They had more aggressive weapons than we had. Anyway, the guy ran away on him. And Nick got caught in the trench himself. How Nick got back to our lines, I don't know. He came back. Nick ended up with an 80% disability. But apropos of that is why we have a tendency to want to come back. Then, from there, I was taken to Maastricht-Holland, which is like the picture MASH. It was like a MASH unit. And I thought they operated and took out the shrapnel. I didn't. They just cleaned it out and left the shrapnel in. And they gave me sodium pentothal. I slept, must have been for 24 hours. Next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance on a stretcher, and the ambulance was 4 high. Luckily, I was always on top for some reason. I was a little guy, so I was on top. And you wouldn't believe, I went to the Army. I was 5'8", 157 pounds. A little different now. Anyway, they sent me to Liège, Belgium. In Liège, Belgium, big hospital, very well done. Interestingly, we had Japanese, Japanese American soldiers from Italy that were in that hospital. I don't know why. From the 442nd Regiment. That was all Japanese in those days. But the Germans kept shelling the hospital with V-2 rockets. And they decided to abandon the hospital because it became dangerous. So they put me on a train. I went to Paris. I came out of Paris. I remember vividly coming out of Paris at the train station, which is now, I came back years later. It's a museum. It's I don't know what the hell they call it, but it was the old train station. And they put me on an ambulance, and I remember also, because I was always on top, looking out the back window, I saw the Chamber of Deputies coming across the Place de Concorde. They took me to a hospital. I was in the hospital about a day and a half. I thought I had it made. I figured a couple more days I'll be able to walk. I'll be able to run around Paris a little bit. Oh no. They decided to evacuate the hospital because there were too many people coming back from the Bulge. They put me on a hospital ship. This big, huge white ship with a big red cross on it. And the first thing they did, they came over to you and said, would you like a hot dog? Would you like a milkshake? Would you like things that you hadn't had since the time you came overseas? Hell yeah, oh, why not? Biggest mistake you ever made. Mix a milkshake with a hot dog, and you haven't had it in years, and you'll have the greatest diarrhea you ever had. Oh boy, did it itch. I spent the whole time in the John. Of the 24 hours that it took us to cross the channel. Across the channel, they sent me to a town called Braintree. We got to Braintree, we were put in Quonset huts. That in itself was an interesting experience because my 157 pounds became 171 by the time I got through. Why? We didn't have a kitchen, but they gave you loaves of bread. They gave you butter and jam. And they gave you a potbelly stove in the middle of the damn Quonset hut to heat it up. Well, it always stunk like hell. Why? We took the bread, put butter on it, put the butter down on the buttered side down on the potted stove, and toasted it. Well, let me tell you, it stank like hell. The goddamn smoke and it was something. I'll never forget. I was there. My bed was next to a guy. His name was Elmer Sandin. He was a scout in the 101st Division, and he got hit in the back. They took out his spleen. So every morning, well, Elmer used to go into town every night and get drunk. He would come back, and the next day he couldn't move. He used to say, "I don't like this foreign country. I go back to Minnesota." That was his favorite expression. He was a character. Anyway, I got out. The hospital, it took about a month. They gave me a week off in London. My claim to fame in London, there was a movie a couple years ago called Mrs. Anderson Presents. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was with, what the hell's her name? Very famous British actress. And it's a story, the first burlesque they ever had in England. But the girls didn't move. So it's called the Red Mill. I went to the Red Mill. I also went to the USO gave me 2 passes to see a Noel Coward debut of one of his shows. I forget what show it was. And the sad thing about it was General Montgomery, after the debacle of the marketplace, namely in Arnhem and Nijmegen. In fact, they made a picture of it. It was called A Bridge Too Far. And they hated, Montgomery for that deal. The airborne guys couldn't stand him. They couldn't stand him from before either. It's the best thing that the Allies ever did was not appoint him to be Supreme Commander. The reason they got Eisenhower is the fact that Eisenhower was a diplomat, and he was able to meld the group together. The one that should have ran it was George Marshall. Anyway, at the end of the show, they played God Save the Queen. And the American soldiers got up and walked out. I felt badly about that. I didn't walk. I thought it was wrong, no matter how much they disliked the general. We as soldiers were in it together, and you can't blame everybody. And felt badly. Anyway, from there, I was sent to replacement. They call it Repo Depot. And how the hell they coordinated that in the war, I don't know. Because I went from one to the other to the other. It took me a month to catch up to the division. And I caught up with the division just prior to meeting the Russians on the Mulda River in a little town called Kaplan. We met the Russians. They waded across the river. They came up, these short, squatty guys, built like a bull. They all were built like Mike Tyson, for God's sake. They came, they lifted you up and gave you a kiss. That's just what I needed. Anyway, It was interesting. My life in combat and my life in general in the Army, I would say, made me what I am today. It gave me a different insight as to life. I still work. I've studied, and I have, in my mind, a reasonable situation of accomplishment. I'm pretty satisfied with what I do. As I say, I'm still working. I have a group of people that I try to instill the type of things that I've learned over the years. I'm a big adherent of a man called Edward Stemming, who was the guru that put Japan together after World War II. I love what I did with him. I think he was another key in my development into what type of culture I would want to instill in the company. And it worked. It worked. And that's the story.